Pregnancy loss is devastating, no matter the circumstances. But how do you navigate a pregnancy loss that was likely preventable when you knew something felt wrong, but no one would listen to you? On today's episode, I am speaking with one incredibly brave loss mother who is sharing her story in the hopes that you'll feel empowered to advocate for yourself, no matter what those around you are saying. Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with me today. So today's episode is a bit of a different one. We are sharing the story of Elle, who is a lost mother and also a therapist for women who have lost a baby in any capacity, including infertility struggles, unsuccessful IVF, and those who are pregnant or parenting again after loss and infertility. Now, Elle's story is a big one, and I'm not going to lie, this is a heavy conversation. And for legal reasons, it's one that Elle wasn't able to speak about for a very long time. But it is for that exact reason that I know how important it is to be sharing what she went through now. So by listening to this episode, I want you to know that no matter how silly you may feel, no matter how much people or medical professionals around you might tell you not to worry, if you are going through infertility or you are pregnant after loss or pregnant in any capacity and you feel like something isn't right on this journey, it is your right to speak up, to be heard, and to push until someone listens. So I hope you can stick with me to the end of this episode because it is such an important one that needs to be heard. So let's get into it. Here's Elle. Elle, it is so wonderful to have you here with us today and to chat with you. I think maybe excited is not the right word. It's always lovely to see your face, but it's so important, I think, what we're going to speak about today. So I want to get straight into it. Can we start by learning a little bit about who you are and what is the work that you do? And we perhaps can go into the story that led you to that work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and it's so lovely to see you again. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Elle. I am a baby loss and pregnancy and parenting after loss therapist. So I help mums all over the world from anything from a failed IVF transfer all the way through to infant death. I cover the whole spectrum. I fell into this line of work. I'll get into that later on. But I hate saying unfortunate because I wish that my job didn't exist, but I'm fortunate to have supported hundreds of mothers all over the world through their grief to get to a place where they're not just surviving anymore, but they're truly living and thriving. And I think that's such an important thing to know that you can do that after loss. So yeah, it's a beautiful space to work in, a space that I wish didn't exist, but a space that I'm very grateful it does, and I'm very humbled and always grateful to be able to do what I do.
Like I said, whilst I'm very excited to have you here, I'm not excited to have to share these things at all, right? It's terrible that the work that you do and that I do exists. I wish that it didn't. I wish that we all just had happy families and we all lived happily ever after. But sadly, that is not how everyone's stories work out. So can you take us back to the beginning of what it was like for you when you decided you wanted to have a family and what happened from there?
So we started trying to conceive when I was about 24, 25. We hadn't been together any more than a year, but we both knew that we wanted children. He's 5 years older than me. And we just thought, like any couple, it was going to be you try to get pregnant, you get pregnant. You're told in school how easy it is, and you spend your entire adult life trying to avoid it. And then when it comes to the time, you're like, great, this will be easy. And we started to realise after about 6 months that wasn't going to be the case. And we tried for around 2 years, which is the kind of amount of time you have to go over here in the UK before you can get any help. So it had been around 2 years that we'd been trying, and we weren't getting anywhere. And I learned after going to see a gynecologist that I had insulin resistant PCOS. So I was an ovulatory. So the chances of us getting pregnant without any support wasn't really very high. And I know in the grand scheme of things, I'm very lucky that my journey with infertility was relatively easily fixed. So I can't sit here and say that I have any plethora of experience of what you've been through and what a lot of your listeners have been through. My heart absolutely goes out to you, because I know seeing negative test after negative test is absolutely soul destroying. And we went to get help, and I said, look, it's not happening. We thought it'd be a lot easier than this. We're doing everything we're supposed to do. I was taking all the supplements, doing all the things, and nothing was working. So they prescribed me letrozole and metformin. And they were like, go away, try this, see how you get on. I went away and did my research. I was like, okay, this sounds promising. They were like, we're not going to put you on Clomid because there's a higher chance of multiples. My fiance is a twin, so like, we'll put you on letrozole. There's a 0.5% chance that you'll get pregnant in multiples. And lo and behold, we were so fortunate that we got pregnant that first cycle. I think that would have been the one random cycle of about 2 or 3 a year that I had that I would have ovulated anyway. And we were just lucky, really, really fortunate that we got pregnant. And we went for a scan at 7 weeks, because my mum said to me when I was about 6 weeks, she was like, you're showing already, and that's not normal. So I was like, okay, I'll book a private scan, we'll figure out what's going on. It was my first ever pregnancy, so I was like, I don't know what's supposed to happen. And then as soon as we went to see the sonographer, as soon as she touched my belly, we saw 2 straight away. So my fiance was jumping for joy, because he was like, yes, we've had twins. He's a twin, so he's a constant competition with his brother. He was like, I beat my brother. He's got 1, I'm having 2. This is great. And the tech went really quiet. So my heart was in my throat already, thinking, oh God, what's wrong? And she was like, nothing's wrong. I just need to do a little bit more exploring. She's, I don't want to worry you, I'm going to go and get the other tech. And she came back, and I was saying to Lewis when they were at the room, I was like, something's wrong. And she came back, and the other woman's face just lit up, and she was like, nothing's wrong. She's like, it's just that we can see a third. And I was like, oh my God, I'm having a litter. So they were like, we just need to check that there's only 1 baby that we can see in each sack. I was like, I hope there's not 6, because that's going to be an interesting journey. And when they confirmed there was 3, they found 3 heartbeats. They were all healthy. They were best case. They were TCTA, the trichorionic triamniotic. Best case scenario for triplet pregnancies. And yeah, from that point, they were like, right, it's all systems go. You need to go to the hospital early. You need to be under a full team. This is going to be a complex pregnancy. So we were kind of on high alert straight off the get-go, because we knew that this was going to be a really high-risk pregnancy. And we went to see the consultant at 10 weeks, and he just deflated me in a single appointment of the chances of them making it alive, getting past 34 weeks gestation. And being obviously a typical mum, you want to cling to hope, I went away and did my own research, and there were so many women that were having healthy triplet pregnancies, having healthy babies, even with triplet pregnancies that were more complicated than my own. So mine was classed as 3 separate pregnancies in 1 uterus. So we had the best case. We were like, right, we can do this. We'll get the right support in place. We'll make sure we're taking precautions. We're doing everything we should be doing. And I did. And my pregnancy was absolutely fine. It was plain sailing. I was really fortunate. I was one of those moms that was like, I've not had any sickness. I'm good. I thought I was the bee's knees. I absolutely thought I'd nailed it. And I got to about 15 weeks, and I started noticing that, this is a bit TMI, but I was losing more fluid than I thought was normal. So I mentioned it to my medical team, and they were like, oh no, you're carrying triplets. It's normal that things would be a bit more excessive than usual. But when I say excessive, I mean I was changing my underwear multiple times a day, because I literally felt like I was on my period. I was like, I don't think this is normal. And that continued. And I continually got gaslit and ignored and refused to be given tests for any kind of fluid. And then it got to, I would have been about 20-ish weeks, and I started noticing that I was getting signs of an infection. So again, I let my medical team know. I didn't hear back off them, so I thought, it can't be anything to worry about. They'd let me know if it's anything serious. I called triage, and at this point we were through COVID, and they were like, unless you're bleeding or in pain, we don't have the staff or the beds, like, manage it at home, and if it gets worse, let us know. So I was like, okay, fine. Like, if it was really bad, they'd have said, come in. Being naive and trusting them as you do. And it got to just before I was 23 weeks, and it was a Sunday, and I remember I felt so shitty. I was like, I'm just going to go to bed. So I slept the entire day, and my mum came around the next morning, and she was like, you look like death. You look so sick. She's like, I think you need to go to hospital. So I was like, okay. So at this point, I thought my mum was just being my mum and just being overzealous. I was like, oh, I'll be fine. But as soon as I got there, they saw me, and I could tell from the look on their faces that something was gravely wrong. And they put me in a bed. I had about 7 doctors around me. They were putting the stickies on for an ECG. They're putting an IV line in straight away. And the consultant came around and he was like, I'm not going to lie to you. We think that you have sepsis. And we're really worried. So we need to give you antibiotics immediately. And we need to basically get this under control before it gets worse. So they pumped me full of antibiotics, and me being naive, thinking, I'll probably be able to go home in a few days, I'll be fine. So they moved me onto a ward, kept giving me all the drugs, and I thought I'll be okay. They came on the next morning, and they were like, yeah, we think we're going to be able to let you go home this evening. Your infection markers are dropping, things are looking better. And I was like, okay, great, I'll go home and just put myself on bed rest if I have to. I was working from home at that point, so it wasn't too difficult to do, but we thought we were okay. So my mum and my partner Lewis went home, and literally an hour after they got home, I stood up after I'd eaten my dinner and my waters broke. And I was like, oh, okay, we're in trouble now. So I called the midwives in, and I met the nicest midwife I've ever met in my entire life, and it happened to be a male midwife, the only male midwife I've ever met, and he was amazing. And he really calmed me down. He was just like, look, I've seen this happen. It doesn't mean it's the end. Your waters can regenerate. There's things that we can do. So I was like, okay. But they took me up to the labour ward anyway. And they pumped me full of steroids and magnesium. And I don't know if you've got any experience with those kind of drugs, but magnesium is possibly the worst drug I've ever experienced. For your listeners as well, if they're not familiar with it, it makes you feel like your entire body's on fire. It's not a fun drug. They like to have somebody sit with you while you're on it because it's quite common to hallucinate and those sort of things. So it's not a great experience. And yeah, they closely monitored me. Obviously, my partner came back, my mum came back, and we just waited. We held our breath and waited. And the next morning, they came round, they gave me a scan, and they said that they couldn't see Noah. So they were sitting in like a little triangle. So Noah was on the bottom, and then I had Eden on one side and Hudson on the other. And they said it was Noah's water that had broken, and they couldn't see him, so they thought he was in the birth canal already, and they couldn't see any movements. They told me that he was more than likely going to be stillborn. So with that knowledge, we obviously chose to have cuddle care and time with him after he was born, because we were expecting to be born already past. And I kept saying to my mum, my midwife was like, I can feel movement. And the midwife kept saying to me, no, it'll just be your body pushing him out. That's what you can feel. And I said to my mum, I was like, no, because I know I can feel him moving. Like, I feel his little arms and legs going. And I knew in the back of my head that he wasn't dead. And the midwife kept going, no, it's just this. And I thought, you're doing it again. You're gaslighting me again. I know what I'm feeling. And lo and behold, I gave birth to him. And the midwife took him away to clean him off. She's like, Ellie, I'm so sorry, you were right. He's alive. And I just lost it. That was the moment I fully lost it. I think every mum who's lost a baby will know that scream that you make. We all do it, and you only ever do it once, and you don't know where it comes from. It's just this guttural noise that comes from you that you cannot stop, and it's just complete and utter despair and loss of hope. And I remember just thinking, what the hell do I do? What am I supposed to do? So I said to the midwife, I was like, well, he's alive, do something. And she was like, we can't, it's too late to get the crash teams in. We don't have them because we didn't allocate them because we thought he was going to be stillborn. So I basically had no choice but to watch my son die. So he was born at 23 and 2, and I didn't know what to expect of a baby born at that gestation. I thought they'd still look like a little alien. But he was perfectly formed. He just needed to put some weight on. He was £1 and he was so tiny. So we just gave him all the love that we could. We sat with him, we sang to him, we loved on him. I was fortunate I was able to have my parents there, so we all spent time with him. And then he passed away with us, and I didn't even have time to catch my breath or process before they came in, and they stitched the umbilical cord where they cut. They stitched it back together and pushed it back inside my cervix, because they were like, we don't want to take the placenta out because we don't know if it'll pull the other two out. So I literally had to carry on with the pregnancy with an infected placenta still retained. They'd never done it before. They were like, this is completely out of our depth. We don't know what's going to happen. After we lost Noah and they ran some more tests, they found out that the infection that I had that had reached my uterus and their chorion was chorioamnionitis, which is a really nasty infection. If it's caught early enough, it can be treated with antibiotics, but if it's not, it's pretty much, I don't want to say almost always fatal, but the prognosis isn't good. So at that point, we knew that we were kind of on borrowed time. And the consultant that was on call came in, and I remember thinking, I hate this guy. But looking back now, I'm like, he was the only person that was ever honest with me. He just said to me, I'm going to be totally honest with you, the likelihood is the other two will come within the next 24 to 48 hours. So we were like, okay, what do we do? And all the staff were like, I know it's really hard, but you need to not get too upset because you don't want to cause any more stress for the other two. And I was like, how the hell do you not get upset when you've just had a baby die? And they're telling me, oh, you need to stay calm for the other two. And I'm trying my hardest, thinking, like, I've got to push this to the back of my mind. I need to grieve later, because right now I have two little lives that are dependent on me, and I can't go through this again. I can't have a repeat of that again. So we pushed through, and my labour stopped. That was the Wednesday. And on the Friday, Lewis had gone home, my mum had taken over and was staying with me. And I remember starting to feel the twinges of labour again at about 10, 11 p.m. And my heart sank, and I was like, oh no, we're here again. What do I do? They couldn't stop it because I'd already had a placenta rupture. The risk of infection was too high. I still had chorionitis. I still had sepsis. So we were like, okay, well, what do we do? And they were like, we'll just wait it out. It might stop on its own. Just stay horizontal. Do not move. We'll just see what happens. But it progressed. It was always going to progress. And I was in labour from 10 or 11 p.m. on the Friday evening through till 6 a.m. on the Sunday morning. And I just remember being in so much pain. And the consultant came in, and she was like, okay, you're 10 centimetres. You need to make a decision what you want to do now, because you can give birth them naturally. It's better for you if you do that, but their prognosis will be worse. Or you can have a C-section, but their prognosis will be better, but yours will be worse. You're in a very precarious position. You have a really nasty infection. We don't know what the likelihood of all of you surviving this is. And because they were so small, they were like, we're going to have to cut you from top to bottom, which means if you have any other pregnancies, you'll only ever have to be able to have C-sections. And they also didn't know the condition of my uterus. There was also a high likelihood that they would have to perform a full hysterectomy after they were born. But being a mum and wanting the best for my kids, I was like, I'm so exhausted at this point anyway. I want what's best for them. Just cut me open and get them out. So we did. They took me down. I remember saying to my mum, I was like, I hope I'll see you later. Like trying to joke my way through it. And I remember looking at the consultant and being like, please just don't let me die. And she looked at me and she was like, I will try my best. She's like, well, I will try and make sure that you will make it. I just want you to know that I cannot guarantee anything, and I cannot guarantee that I'll make it, and I cannot guarantee that you'll wake up. So I was like, okay, I'm going into this knowing what's going to happen. I'll take my chances. It was a general anaesthetic C-section, so I couldn't have anybody with me. So that's probably the most scared I've ever been in my entire life. Taken down to theatre. They take all the pain relief off you, so I'm contracting with nothing. I'm on my own. I don't know if I'm going to make it out alive. I don't know if my kids are going to make it out alive. And just the fear was the only thing that was keeping me going, the fear and the adrenaline. And I remember just blacking out and coming around in the recovery room and just thinking, okay, I'm alive. I don't know what's happened. I don't know if my kids are alive. And there was a woman in the bed next to me with her newborn. And I just remember lying there thinking, are you fucking kidding me? And the midwife came in and she was like, I am so sorry, let's get you out of here. So they took me back round to my room, and straight away I was like, don't take me to my room, take me to my kids. Are they alive, first off? And she was like, yes, they're alive, they're in the NICU. I was like, just take me to them. I just need to see them. So she will be around in my hospital bed. And I remember the consultants talking to me and fighting sleep so hard. And I just wanted to see them. And I remember catching a glimpse of them because they had incubators next to each other, and just seeing their little pink bodies inside these little boxes and just thinking, oh my God, like they're my kids and they're alive. And they were so tiny. And I just thought, wow, like that box is doing for them everything that I can't do anymore. And I'm so grateful for technology at this point that we can do that. But just the immense guilt that I couldn't keep them in, I couldn't keep them safe, was just awful, and it ate away at me for a long time. And anyway, they wheeled me back round to my room. I spent a couple of days recovering, just being Daisy the dairy cow. My milk came in, and it was the only thing that I had control over. So I threw myself into it. I just spent every second that I could with them in the NICU, just with a pump strapped to me. I mean, they couldn't even eat. They were so tiny. They were getting everything they needed through IV, so they weren't even able to eat at that point. And just the 2 weeks that followed were a complete and utter roller coaster. So every day we'd go in, and Eden would be doing great one day, and Hudson wouldn't be doing great, and they'd switch. And they had so many problems. They were both born with grade 3 interventricular brain hemorrhages, which is quite common with triplets, but not just with triplets, but with babies born with that gestation. So Eden and Hudson were born at 23 and 6. They were just under the 24-week mark, so they were micro preemies. Hudson was £1.1, the same as Noah, and Eden was £1.2. She's a little bit bigger. And just going in there every day, not knowing what you were walking into, you feel like you become a doctor yourself because you get so used to reading their stats and so used to kind of going, okay, this is great, I need to mention that to somebody, what's going on with this? And yeah, just seeing their tiny bodies, all the things they had to have, all the wires they had to have, all the tests, the prodding, poking, it just ripped me apart as a mum. I just felt so guilty. And we got to day 8, and the consultant pulled me to one side, and we'd noticed a change in Hudson over the previous couple of days. He'd started to look really puffy, and his colour had started to change a little bit. And she just said to me, it's not great. We don't know where to go at this point. He has the worst neonatal infection I've ever seen. And she'd been in the job for a long time. And she says, we've hit it with the domestos bleach equivalent of antibiotics, and nothing is shifting this infection. She says, he has sepsis at this point. We also think that he may have meningitis. And the bleed in Hudson hadn't been able to be stemmed. So at that point, the blood was stemming out of the ventricles, the pockets in the brain, and into his brain tissue. And the only way to relieve the pressure in his skull was to drill through his skull every day and drain the fluid, which was going to significantly impact the condition of his brain. And I just said, look, what are the chances of him making it out of here alive? And she was like, I don't want to say, but it's not good. And I said, if we choose to do that, the drilling, what is that going to do? She was like, it's more than likely going to leave him in a vegetative state. So at that point, when you're faced with that, and we'd always said that we would try and do anything we could for them, but if it came to a point where they were going to have little or zero quality of life, for us as a family, we just didn't want that. And I know everybody makes different decisions, and I would never judge anybody for any decision they make. When it comes to your own family, you'll always do what's right for you. And she said to me, at this point, it is just the machines that are keeping him here. So we were like, okay. She was like, you can have as much time as you want to make that decision. And I was like, I'd rather just rip off the band-aid. I don't feel like it's fair keeping him here if it's just machines that are keeping him alive. I don't know if he's in any pain or discomfort. And I felt like at that point it was just me selfishly being his mum, wanting to hold on to him for as long as I could. So we were like, okay, what do we do? How's the process work? We'd kind of hardened ourselves to it at that point because we'd already lost Noah, so we knew what it was like to hold them and kind of say our goodbyes. So we were preparing ourselves for that. But I think this one hit harder because it was so unexpected. We thought he was going to make it. And we took him off all of his equipment and just left his morphine drip on, and we took him around to a side room. And bless him, he was so tired. We had 20 minutes with him before he passed. So we did what we could. We held him, rocked him, sang to him, read to him, changed his clothes, all that kind of stuff. Everything that we could have done to be his parents, and gave him as much love as we possibly could. And then the thing that all lost parents know and hate is handing your baby to a nurse and walking away from that room knowing that you're never going to see your baby again is just the hardest thing, and so difficult to put into words of how every single feeling is going through your body at that point. And I remember walking back into the NICU and thinking, okay, we have to do what we did with Noah. We have to kind of bury it and we'll deal with it later because she's depending on us. She needs us. And the thought of potentially getting to take at least one of them home, it was just the only thing that was pulling me through. And she did so well after that for a good few days. And we were like, okay, we might actually get a shot of bringing a baby home here. She was the strongest of all of them. Even when I was pregnant with her, she was a feisty one. She was always keeping her brothers in line. And we were like, okay, we'll do what we need to do. And, she was getting to a point where she opened her eyes for the first time. She was putting on weight. She would recognise my voice when I came in. So as soon as she heard me, her stats would go all over the place. Bless her. So we were just so hopeful that she was going to make it home. And we got to day 12 and we started noticing that her tummy was going to recolour. And I mentioned it to the midwife, the consultant, and she was like, okay, we'll get a scan ordered. And they came up to scan her, and we were in a teaching hospital, so the sonographer came up with a student. And I remember sitting there, and she said to the student, can you spot anything? And she said, yeah, the bowels look bright, like a bright white. And she was like, yeah, you're right, they shouldn't be that colour. There's something going on here. So me immediately was like, what do you mean they shouldn't be that colour? What's going on? And I'll never forgive this woman for this. She turned around and she's like, I'm really sorry. She was like, I can't tell you. The test results need to go off and be analysed. And I was like, 2 of my kids have died. You can't let me sit here knowing there's something wrong and you're not telling what's going on. And she was like, I'm sorry, I can't. So I literally pulled my consultant over and I was hysterical. I was like, you can't do this to me. This isn't fair. I need to know what's going on. So better she went off and did what she could and came back and she was like, I don't know the ins and outs. I know that something is going on in her bowels and her gut. We can tell from her colour as well, and her tummy's feeling a bit swollen. I don't know what it is. We'll figure it out. She's like, but I'm sure whatever it is, we'll give it our best shot. So I was like, okay, fine. Anyway, we went home. I say we went home, we were staying with family because they were like 5 minutes in the hospital. We went back and got some sleep. And we got that dreaded phone call at 2 a.m. And they were like, you need to get here now. So we were like, okay, it's happening again. They don't call unless it's serious. We got there and she had about 10 people around her bed. And the on-call consultant came over and he was like, we lost her and we managed to get her back. He's like, I was doing CPR on her for quite a while. She was without oxygen for around 6 minutes. We don't know what damage that would have done. But we managed to get her back and she's stable. And I was like, okay, we'll run the tests, we'll figure out what's going on, we'll work with it. At this point, we were just desperate to cling on to any kind of hope. And she seemed to be doing okay once they got her back. And we didn't leave her side, and the consultant came around at around 10 a.m. And I just remember looking at her face, and her face was just so solemn, and I thought, oh, I know how this is going to go. And they pulled us into a side room, and you know if they're taking you into a side room, it's never going to be a good conversation. And they said to us, you know, she's healthy, but because she's not been able to eat anything and she's been on a drip, bad bacteria has made its way into her gut, and she ended up with necrotizing enterocolitis, or neck for short. And I had no idea what neck was at that point. And they were like, basically, it's an infection that eats away at the digestive system, and it's eaten away quite significantly at Eden. So I was like, okay, well, let's fly her to a children's hospital. We'll have surgery. If she can have a stoma, we'll figure it out. And she said, I've spoken to consultants at Alderhay, which is a children's hospital in Liverpool. She was like, they're the only place that will be able to do the surgery. And she's so tiny that, one, we don't think she'd make the journey. And from scans that we've taken, the infection has taken hold of everything from her stomach to her rectum, and we don't think that there's going to be anything that we could be able to save. And she was like, I don't know what to do at this point. She was like, you can't live without a gut. She was like, it's not an option to have any kind of transplant or anything like that. And even if we could, she wouldn't likely make the journey. And she was just like, I'm so sorry, but I think this is the end of the road. And she says it's the same situation. You know, the machines will keep her here for as long as you want to, but ultimately at this point, she doesn't have any kind of digestive system that would able to keep her alive, and there's nothing else we can do. So we were just like, it's game over. 2 weeks of hell, and we've got to go through this for a third time. And just the immense, I think the wave of a combination of just sheer dread, but also a little bit of relief that it was finally going to be over, and the guilt for feeling that relief was just, yeah, every spectrum of emotion you could possibly go through as a human being just were running through my head. And again with Hudson, I was like, I'm not dragging this out. I don't know if the neck is causing her any pain. I can't leave her there to suffer knowing that I'm keeping her here just because I don't want to let go. So we made the same decision, and they took her off the support. We went round to a private room with her, and I noticed they kept her PCR morphine on like they did with Hudson, but I hadn't had time to look at it with Hudson's. But with Eden's, I noticed that it got a little note on the bottom that said 3 times dose. So they were giving her 3 times the amount they should have been giving her. And I later learned that they do this with, I don't know if they do it with all people passing, but they do it specifically with neonates because not only does it relieve their pain, but it helps them to pass quicker. So it's a double-edged sword because you want that, you don't want them to be holding on, but you also want every precious second that you have with them. So we just did everything we could, and bless her, she was so strong, even with everything that she was going through. We had about 7 hours with her, 7 or 8 hours, and it was just the most precious time, and it was the only time that we genuinely, truly felt like parents, because the only time I got to hold any of my triplets was when they were dying. And it's so heartbreaking, but at the same point, you're like, I actually feel like a mum in this weird little window of time that we have. And you equally want it to stretch on forever, but you want it to be over. And I did everything. I talked to her, sang to her, read to her, bathed her, changed her. It was the first, Hudson's was the first nappy I got to change. But changing a nappy as a new mum is such a weird experience. And preemie nappies are like so tiny, and even they were too big on her. And we picked out some clothes for her. because we had so much time with her, all of us, me, my mum, my dad, my partner, we all got to have time with her individually. So yeah, just really, really cherished the time that we had. Took loads of pictures, loads of videos, because I knew that that was all I was ever going to have. So just utterly made the most of it. And yeah, that window came that the doctor comes in and they keep checking them. And it was that final moment where the doctor came in and she was like, okay, she's gone. And that was kind of the moment we were like, okay, this is over. This is fully over. And I think that was the one that hit me the most, because handing her over to a nurse, we left that hospital knowing that we weren't coming back again. This time was so different because we didn't have anything to come back for. And I just remember leaving that hospital for the final time with 3 boxes instead of 3 babies. And knowing that my 3 babies were in the chapel of rest. The only thing that brought me any peace was knowing that they were together. And we just waited for our funeral directors to collect them. And I remember going back to, we were staying with family and we went back to their house. And I just remember thinking, what the hell do I do with my life now? That was it for me. We were an instant family. We were 1 pregnancy and done. We were going to have 3 kids. The nursery was done. We bought everything. We were so ready to be parents, and just have that ripped away over the course of 2 weeks. We were just so lost, so lost. And I remember that evening, we sat round. They had a pretty big dinner table, so we sat around their dinner table as a family. My mum and dad were with us, Lewis's family were with us, and we had a takeaway. And I just remember sitting there and watching everybody else converse and laugh. And I just remember thinking, how does the world carry on turning after what we've just had to do? I didn't understand how everything didn't just freeze. And the weeks following after that, I can't even tell you what I did. I was just so numb, just going through the motions and just trying to find some semblance of purpose to carry on. And I couldn't, I genuinely couldn't. And it got to a point where it got really bad. And I was in a really, really dark place. And I could not, I'll be totally honest, I could not see any point in carrying on. There just wasn't. I just wanted to be with my kids. And I remember my mum saying to me, she's like, I'm really, really worried about you. You need to go get some help. And I am so stubborn. Typical only/oldest daughter syndrome. I'm always the one that takes care of everybody else, and I didn't really know how to take care of myself. Taking care of myself was taking care of other people to me. So I rallied after my grief, making sure that everybody else was okay, and that's kind of my way of keeping myself busy. And when my mum finally said to me, "You need to go get some help," I was like, "Okay, it must be bad if somebody else is calling me out on it." So I tried, and the system we have over in the NHS, they're not great with mental health support for mums anyway, but when you've gone through a bereavement, the support isn't great. And I remember feeling like I had a bereavement midwife, but she checked in with me a couple of times, and then I kind of felt like I was a bit of a burden, so I didn't really feel comfortable going back to them. And I went to see my doctor, and he said, we can put you in touch with the counsellor here. And this is going to sound so awful, but it was a guy, and I remember thinking to myself, there's no offence to him, I'm sure he's great at his job, but unless he's birthed 3 kids and had to hold them all while they die, he's not going to understand what I've been through. And I just so desperately wanted to feel understood, that I tried everywhere. I mean, charities were great, but they had a really long wait list. It was like a 12 to 16 week wait. And I was like, I don't know how long I'll be able to carry on like this. And at that point, I was worried that I might hurt myself. So I went to see somebody privately. It was a friend of my aunt's, and she was a hypnotherapist. And she hadn't lost her kids, but she lost her husband in an awful accident. And I just remember for the first time feeling like somebody understood some semblance of what I was going through. And just the relief of being able to offload that onto somebody else was just so cathartic and so what I needed. I didn't realise that I needed it up until that point. Um, and I saw her for a few sessions, and it just the dramatic difference in how I felt like I could cope again. And I finally started feeling like there was something for me after what I'd been through. And she said to me, because I have a background in mental health, I have a psychology degree and a few other bits and pieces I've done. And she said to me, she's like, why don't you do this? She was like, there is nobody out there that is doing this for what you've been through, what you've experienced. So there's so many women that go through loss that are feeling exactly how you're feeling. So I was like, yeah, can I do it? Is it going to be too much? So I went away and put some real thought into it, and I just decided to grab the ball by the horns and go for it, because I was on maternity leave at the time, and I remember the deadline looming, approaching for returning to work, and just thinking, I don't want to go back to work. I know that I'm a different person now, and I'm not going to be understood in that space. And I felt like a square peg in a round hole when I did eventually go back. So I did my training and I set up my practice, and it was the first time that I ever really felt like I'd had some purpose after they died. And just being able to share them with other people that had similar situations, being able to share other people's children with them, giving them a solution that I wish I'd have had at the time is just the best thing I ever could have done. And I always say to people, I'd give anything. I'd give anything and everything I have to have my kids back. But not having them, this is the next best thing that I could have done for myself. And I've honestly never looked back. I went back to my office job while starting my practice, and in theory, I don't know why I did it. I think I just did try to prove myself that I could do it. But I went back and just hated it. I just wasn't. Nobody understood. I think people thought that I'd had a miscarriage. They didn't understand that they'd been born and I'd lost them. Not that it makes any difference. Grief should be grief and it should be treated fairly, but just the misunderstanding of general people. I think when you go through loss, they think that babies just disappear. And trying to explain that to people and saying to people, oh, I've got pictures, do you want to see? And people be like, oh, no, I'm okay. And be like, okay. I just felt so out of place that I just didn't want to be there. So I quit my job after going. I went back for a few months and then quit. And threw myself into my practice. I loved every second of it. And then came the time that my fiance was like, right, I think I'm ready for another one. I was like, not a chance. I do not want to go through that again. I think he would have had another one straight away. And I know some people that works for them. They really enjoy that. Not that's the wrong word, not enjoy. They really look forward to having something to throw themselves into. For me, I couldn't fathom the thought of ever risking that again. Um, so we kind of gave it some time, and I think about it was coming up for a year had passed since we'd lost them, and I remember saying to him, "Okay, I'll try." But the reason I was so willing to try was because it had taken us so long to get pregnant with them that I thought it was going to be the same situation this time. And we were so, I don't know how, but we were so fortunate that we fell pregnant naturally within a couple of months. And I got that positive pregnancy test on my birthday, on my 29th birthday. And I remember thinking, holy shit, how the hell am I going to get through this? And to cut a long story very short, pregnancy after loss was so much harder than I ever thought it was going to be. Just constantly the fear of waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for something to go wrong, waiting for that call that something wasn't okay. And I was so lucky that we went to a different hospital, and the consultant I had, she is the most phenomenal woman I have ever met. She is the epitome of what a doctor should be. Um, she did everything for me. She allowed me to advocate for myself. Nothing was too much trouble. If I wanted extra appointments, extra scans, extra tests, she'd do it all for me because she knew how much that helped my anxiety. And she was great. My pregnancy, luckily, was really standard, really straightforward. And I had a scheduled section with him, and it was everything I needed. It was such a cathartic birth. And I remember thinking, this is such a different experience from what I've had before. I didn't realise that birth could be this peaceful and this lovely of an experience. And yeah, we welcomed Sonny into the world in 2023, and he's just turned 2. And I'm now parenting after loss, running my practice, and in a place where I still cry. I've cried now, because how could you not cry when you've been through something so traumatic? But doing what I do has given me the tools to move through my life in a way now that I never thought that it was possible to feel joy like I do now. I never thought it was possible to have a zest for life like I do now. And life after loss is so much more than I ever expected. But I do think it comes down to doing the work and having the tools and the support system and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my story.
Elle, thank you for sharing that so openly. I don't know what the word is. I was in tears through so much of that. I think I still, but I'm so sorry for everything you went through, my love.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's very hard to put into words an experience like that. So thank you for doing your absolute best. There aren't enough words to
Thank you
describe.
for giving me the space to be able to.
I think the only way we even start to heal from these things, and like you said, you were so alone.
Yeah.
You had no support. I mean, you had your beautiful partner and your family around you, of course, but our partners and our families are not mental health experts.
No.
And I hear this over and over again, that people go and seek mental health support after they have been through all of the difficult things on their journeys, and it can be more damaging than it is healing if
Yeah.
that therapist doesn't empathize and understand what you've been through. I think that's incredibly damaging. Well, I've had a couple of therapists on the podcast who I think do an incredible job of it, and we need more of them. So thank you for doing this work. My goodness. I feel like I have so many questions, but you answered so much of what I wanted to ask you, which was, how did you even get through the next steps, and how did you rebuild your life again? And what is the starting point? Where do you even go from? What is the first step that you take when you're in that position?
Oh, that's a good but a very big question. I think the first step, and I say this to anybody that comes to me for help, is that I always will advise people not to reach out for help straight away, because I think that you need time for the initial shock to wear off, and for the initial processing of that really raw and heavy grief. And the only way you get through that is by sitting with it. I say this to all my clients: you can't go over grief, you can't go under it, you have to go through it. The only way out is through. And I think in those early days, you are so numb, you don't have the capacity to feel anything else, and you don't have the capacity to process. So all you need to do is just sit with it. And it's shit, it's heavy, it's hard, and there's no buttering it up to make it better. You do just have to go through it. And it does help having a support system, you're absolutely right. But I always say, if you've ever watched the Titanic, it's the same thing as when Rose says, it's like, I'm standing in a room full of people and I'm screaming and nobody can hear me. It's the same thing. You can be surrounded by loved ones, their intentions can be the absolute best, but you still feel like you are absolutely drowning in loneliness and that nobody quite understands it. So I think the first steps I would take, if you are ready, is reaching out to other people who have been through a similar experience. That's the first step to not feeling lonely. So that can be a mental health expert like myself if you feel ready to, or it could even be support groups, or even on Instagram and Facebook, there is a huge community of lost moms. And even though our experiences aren't exactly the same, we all have that just deep knowing and understanding, and it creates an instant bond. And one of my friends, Mim, summed it up perfectly. I met with her yesterday, and she said it's this. The way she words it is, we're not all the same, wearing the same shoes, but we've all shopped in the same shoe shop. And I think that's a great analogy for it, because we all know some capacity what it feels like. And I think child bereavement, miscarriage, loss, whatever your preferred term, it's such a unique kind of pain and loss that it deserves its own category outside of grief, because it's not the same as losing somebody else in your family. Even if that loss is unexpected, you still had time with that person. You know their voice, what their likes and dislikes are, what they find funny, all the little quirks that you have to remember them by. I think grief as a parent, so much of it is grieving what should have been and what was to come. And that journey that you go on, that you're going to miss their first word, their first steps, their first day at school. You grieve an entire lifetime that you should have had with that child. And I think that's what makes it so uniquely complex. And you're absolutely right. I think if you're not navigating that with the right person, it can be detrimental. And the amount of people that I've had come to me and said, I've been to see a therapist and they just don't get it, is astonishing. And there needs to be so much more education around not only bereavement and trauma-informed therapy, but specifically child loss and pregnancy loss and all those kind of things, because it is so unique that I think it does genuinely take somebody with experience to fully appreciate what you're going through, and to be able to walk that journey with you and just go, hey, this is what worked for me, and I'm here to give you what I wish somebody would have given me in those early days. And I think that makes a huge difference.
There is something so healing about finding purpose in the pain and the grief that you've been through. And you spoke about that as well. You felt like there was so much healing in you becoming a hypnotherapist. I was about to say hypnotist. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My question is, what is exactly involved within your work? But I think that was something that helped me so much heal my journey, was finding a reason for it all being there, and knowing that I had been able to process what I had been through, and I had been able to heal, as much as you can. I think that you're always going to be healing forever and ever, aren't you, when you go through loss?
Yeah.
But there was something so incredible and opening about being able to help others as well.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about what is the work that you do? Can you explain it? How is it different to, say, talk therapy or CBT, and what is it that you help women, and how do you help them?
Yeah, I love this bit because I can get really nerdy with it. So I have always been predominantly a hypnotherapist, but I call myself a therapist in general because I use so many different techniques. My favourite technique to use at the moment is a method called superconscious grief therapy. And what sets it apart from the rest is that, one, there's no other therapist in the world that does it. The method that I use is one that was created by my friend for use with everything. It's literally the closest thing I've ever experienced to magic. And I say this to everybody, I don't do anything unless I've experienced it as a client first. And he helped me when I was really struggling with postpartum anxiety and depression after I had Sunny, my rainbow, and it was so, the change was just dramatic that I was like, I have to do this. So he taught me how to do it, and I've adapted it to work the best way possible for grief, and specifically our kind of grief. And the reason that I get such great results is because with typical methods of therapy, like talk therapy, counselling, coaching, that sort of thing, they are great tools, and they give you the space that you need to process in that moment. But quite often I see people will come to me who've had that sort of therapy before, and they go, well, I finished my sessions, and I'm like, what now? Because the grief is still there, and I don't quite know how to navigate forward. So The difference in what I do is I still hold that space for you and give you the capacity to talk it through, but we also do some really deep work within the brain. So we really work with the neuroplasticity of the brain and actually change neural pathways and connections. So it's not just a surface level change, it's a real subconscious level change. And the way it works is, if you're not familiar with hypnotherapy, you go into a really, really lovely trance, a really nice relaxed state. It's kind of like the bit just before you fall asleep where you're just super chilled. And that allows us to bypass your conscious mind, which is what you'd use typically in most forms of therapy. But your conscious mind is your gatekeeper. She's a babe, we love her because she tries to keep you safe. But by trying to keep you safe, she activates the parts of the brain. I like to call it the character 2. If you've ever watched Inside Out, it's like anxiety. That kind of little character that sends off loads of warning signals going, we don't want to go there, because we go there, that makes us feel sad. And we don't want to feel sad. We want to bury that. So often it takes a lot longer to do those kind of therapies because you're having to kind of push through the conscious mind. Whereas what I do, we go straight to the subconscious. We don't have to do that. We bypass that. And I'm basically just the person with the key who opens the door, and then your brain does all the work that you need to do. And all we're doing is taking your brain back to a place of balance and equilibrium. So your brain knows what it feels like to experience a spectrum of emotions before you experience trauma. So all we're basically doing is rewiring the brain to want to experience all of those emotions and hold them all in a way that feels safe and comfortable. We don't have to relive the trauma. We don't have to go over it again. And we're not getting rid of it. We're not taking it away because we can't. And we're not going to fix grief because you can't fix grief. Anybody that says that, you need to run for the hills. Grief needs to be there. You need to go through grief. You need to heal, because grief is love with nowhere to go. So you're always going to carry that because you're always going to love your baby. But what we do want to do is neutralize the way that we feel towards the trauma, towards those memories that have so much charge in them, and towards the feelings that are underneath the grief. So the anxiety, the overwhelm, the shame, the guilt. We want to be able to release those in a way that feels safe. So that's what this does. It allows you to do all of that in a shorter space of time because of working with the subconscious, and move forward with tools that allow you to cope if you are in a situation where you're triggered again or those feelings crop up again, because you're going to feel those emotions again. You can't put a lid on them. They're emotions. We're humans. We feel emotions. But if we can neutralize the way that we feel towards those emotions or triggers, it opens up a whole new space inside of your brain. I remember the first session I had with this, I said to my friend Scott, I was like, my brain feels so empty now. I'm not holding on to that anxiety. What do I fill it with? And my brain found ways to fill it with things that made me feel good, that brought me joy, that allowed me to feel joy without guilt, that allowed me to want to feel a zest for life again, to find hobbies again, to spend time with my family, to show up for my son in a way that allowed me to feel present. And that's the difference with this, is that typically I can see change within the first couple of sessions, but over a course of 6 sessions, the change I'll see in a client from the woman that comes to me at the beginning to the woman that I see after 6 weeks, like I said earlier, it's nothing short of magic. It's incredible. Just the change it creates, the space it gives you, just allowing you to feel like you can breathe again. It's unlike anything else I've ever experienced. And I know I'm biased and I'm going to say that, but it genuinely, it's been life changing for me and for the clients that I've walked through as well. I know the changes I've seen have been incredible.
I think that it's a really important thing to note is the thing you said about how grief doesn't go away, and we would never want it to. And that sounds weird, doesn't it? Because you don't want to be struggling and miserable for your whole life. But I have a lot of students who come to me and say, I don't want to forget about my baby. I don't want to forget about everything that I experienced with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so important. And I explain to them, and we need to point out now that it is never about forgetting about your baby. It is only about you being able to remember them without it hijacking your life. and to
Yes.
be able to look back at them with these sort of bittersweet memories and
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that they only ever knew love
Yeah.
because in their short little lives they were surrounded by everything that you were giving them. And
Yeah.
I find a bit of comfort in that.
I
So I hope
agree.
other people do as well. Oh, this is a really big conversation, Elle.
Yeah.
I want to try and finish this on a lighter note. Oh, I'm so careful with my language here because no, this is like it's a heavy topic. It needs to be.
It is.
But perhaps you could leave people with a sense of possibility of what is possible for them. If someone is
Yes.
listening to this and they are in the depths of their own grief and they don't know how to get through it, what do you want to say to them?
Oh, that's such a lovely question. I think just to start, I want to kind of just cover what you just said about feeling like you're letting go of your baby, and I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a common misconception that letting go of that pain is letting go of your baby, and it is not. They are two completely separate things. And I think anybody who's listening to this that is in the depths of their grief and is struggling to find a way forward, I think the most important thing I can say to you is that you're not alone, even though you feel like you might be right now. You are not. There are so many people out there that understand what you're going through, that deeply understand your pain. And I know it feels almost impossible to see a way forward right now. And the thought of ever being happy again feels a million miles away. But it does happen. And it happens when you least expect it. The light starts to creep back in. And all I can say to you is embrace it when it does. Don't push it away. Don't allow that guilt to rob you of what you deserve. Because one thing life teaches us with loss is that life is so short. And I'm never going to be the one to sit here and say, oh, you need to carry on. That's just how it is, because it's not. But you do find a way to carry on. And people will say to you, you're so brave, you're so strong. But you know that's because you have no choice other than to be. But it's okay if you have moments, a week, a month, a year, 10 years in, where you fall apart again. Because that's the natural cycle of grief. That's just what happens. But I think get yourself in a place where you have a good support system. Reach out for help if you need it, because it was life changing for me and I wish I'd have done it sooner. And like I said earlier, unfortunately, the only way to the other side of grief is through it. But there is a life the other side of grief, and I wish somebody had told me that at the beginning when I really couldn't see it. There is, and I am living proof of that. I've done the work. I found a purpose, and not always saying that you have to find a purpose, because you don't always have to find a purpose to your loss or your grief. Sometimes it just is. But whatever you decide to do is okay. And I'm 4 years in now, 4 years in as of last month. The 26th of June was kind of the final milestone of our losses when Eden died. So I'm 4 years in, and I wish that I'd have had a glimpse of where I'd be in 4 years, because the life I live now, I never thought was possible. I never thought it was possible to enjoy life, to be happy, to have a living child, to show up for them, and to be at a point where my grief doesn't consume me. I think of my kids every day, but not in a way that brings me pain. And just to let you know that life is possible and it is coming. You've just got to steer your ship through it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Elle, where can people get in touch with you if they would like to reach out to you and work with you? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, if anybody would like to reach out to me, I do everything through Instagram. Keep it simple. So my Instagram handle is at Elle Margetson Hypnotherapy. I'm sure Jen will tag it for you. And you can drop me a DM. I have my calendar available if you want to book in a call. I'm always, always happy to chat with people, even if you just need that space with somebody that just gets it. I get it, and I know how hard it can be. So yeah, I would
An
love
understatement.
to talk to anyone. Yeah, but I would love to talk to anybody that's listened to this and has listened to my story and resonates and connects with that in any way, or feels like they need some help. Please always feel like you can reach out. It's always a safe space for you to do so.
Thank you. You're amazing, Elle, and I so appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening right to the end of this episode. And I know how hard it is to hear so much of what Elle shared and what she went through and everything that she spoke about. And listening back to this episode was really hard for me, as hard as it was hearing the story for the first time. But if you found this information helpful, if you think it is something that others need to hear, please share it and get this information out to as many people as possible. Now, next week on the podcast, we are going to be speaking about negative thought patterns when you are trying to conceive and how much this endless spiral can affect you, and importantly, how you can pull yourself out of it. So, until then, I am sending you all of my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.